Good afternoon. We're joined by Mr. Mona Panda. He's known as Mona Panda in the region, in the Southern Africa region. He, of course, is the country director for Angola, for Jesuit Refugee Service. Good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon and thanks for your invitation.
For what I'm sure is going to be a great conversation. Now, just to let you know that the country director for Jesuit Refugee Service, South Africa, Johan Fuljoen, is also going to assist us this afternoon because, of course, Mona, being from Angola, speaks Portuguese, and Johan is fluent in Portuguese. Johan, thanks for your assistance this afternoon as well.
Thank you.
Mona, of course, Jesuit Refugee Service works with refugees in Angola. Maybe as a starting point, if you can just tell us how many refugees there are. And because we're working in the Southern Africa region, we have different policies that apply to different countries. But one example, in Zimbabwe and in Malawi, we have refugees in camps, whereas in South Africa, we have what we call urban refugees, so which means that they live and they work and they study amongst South African citizens. What is the situation in Angola?
Relativamente a Angola, quanto ao número de refugiados, não temos uma estatística fixa.
In Angola, we don't have certain specific statistics.
Ok, porque a migração é vasta,
Because there's a huge amount of immigration into the country.
por lado, e por outro lado, o controle, o sistema é muito burocrático.
And the system of control is very bureaucratic.
Entretanto, podemos fazer uma estimativa de mais ou menos 40.000 refugiados e requerentes de asilo.
But we estimate that there is more or less 40,000 refugees and asylum seekers.
E nesse caso de várias áreas, estamos a falar, geralmente encontram-se na área dos diamantes, na Lunda Norte.
There's various scenarios in the country, for instance, the diamond mines in Lunda Norte, Luanda,
e também Cabinda,
also in Cabinda we have refugees,
praticamente nas zonas fronteiriças.
and in the border areas.
Bem, na verdade o que nós temos é uma migração mista.
We have a mixed immigration flow.
Podemos dizer, em termos de refugiados, nós temos refugiados urbanos.
In terms of refugees, we have urban refugees,
E também temos refugiados no campo.
and we also have refugees in a camp situation.
Ok. Praticamente temos três campos que nós conhecemos,
There are 3 refugee camps that we know of.
que é o campo do Zaz e o Canjamba, na Lunda Norte,
The camps of Zaj and Kanjamba in Lunda Norte,
e um campo em Viana.
and a camp in Viana.
Nesse caso, a maioria dos refugiados não se encontram no campo, se encontram na cidade, porque no campo não há condições para sobreviver.
Most of the refugees find themselves in the city because there are no good conditions for survival in the camps.
Very interesting. So you have a mixed model in Angola, which is actually quite fascinating. Now, Mona, what I want to know is, in South Africa, for example, we have an idea of where most of our refugees are coming from. So at Jesuit Refugee Service, the vast majority of people that we assist are Congolese, followed by Somalis, and then obviously people from Burundi, Rwanda, as well as other parts of the continent as well. Ethiopia, Eritrea come to mind immediately. And throughout the continent for various reasons. The vast majority in terms of statistically, where are most of the refugees coming from that find themselves in Angola?
Se calhar por causa das fronteiras. Geralmente a maioria dos refugiados que nós temos em Angola vem do Congo Democrático.
Most of the refugees we have, because we have a border with them, come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC.
E os segundos são os ruandeses.
In the second place would be Rwandans.
Por que os ruandeses? Porque na altura da guerra no Congo Democrático, em 97,
Because during the time of the war in the DRC in 97,
os ruandeses, quando fugiram em 94 do Ruanda para o Congo,
when refugees fled from Rwanda in 94 to the DRC,
durante a guerra do Congo não tiveram como a não ser pedir mais asilo em Angola. Durante o conflito no Congo Democrático, não tiveram como senão também fugir para Angola.
And because there was war in the Congo at that stage, they continued and fled on into Angola.
O terceiro grupo que estamos a resistir nesse momento são somalianos.
The third group, a major group that we are registering at the moment, are Somalians,
Mauritanianos
people from Mauritania
e Eritreia.
and Eritreans.
Também temos alguns burundeses,
We also have some Burundians,
temos da Côte d'Ivoire,
we have from Côte d'Ivoire,
mas a maioria dos refugiados em Angola são mesmo congoleses democráticos.
but the majority of refugees are from the DRC.
Now, ordinarily when we talk about Africa, we talk in terms of Anglophone or Francophone Africa, where people largely speak as a lingua franca. They either speak English or they speak French. Angola and Mozambique are in the unique position of being former Portuguese colonies.
Okay.
So therefore, the lingua franca in both those countries tends to be Portuguese, as in Angola.
Yeah.
Isn't it difficult for refugees when they come from these countries to Angola to be able to adapt and speak Portuguese? I mean, I was in Angola recently and I was very impressed to see that no matter what the background of a refugee was, they spoke Portuguese fluently. But I mean, isn't it a bit of a difficult integration?
É difícil a integração, por um lado, para esses que vêm do Corno de África.
The integration is especially difficult of those who come from the Horn of Africa.
Mas para aquelas pessoas que geralmente saem do Congo Democrático para Angola,
But those that come from the DRC into Angola,
as nossas fronteiras falam praticamente a mesma língua.
people on both sides of the border usually speak the same language.
E porque nós também, angolanos, há muito recentemente éramos refugiados no Congo Democrático.
And because we as Angolans until recently were refugees in the DRC,
E também na Zâmbia, onde falam inglês,
and also in Zambia where English is spoken,
também tivemos alguns angolanos na Namíbia e aqui na África do Sul.
we also have Angolans who stayed in Namibia and in South Africa as refugees.
A paz em Angola só foi restabelecida em 2002,
Peace was only restored in Angola in 2002,
depois de 30 anos de guerra.
after 30 years of war.
Os retornados em Angola começaram a se organizar. O retorno em Angola começou em 2004
The return of refugees only started to be organized in Angola in 2004
e oficialmente terminou em 2011.
and officially finished in 2011.
O ano passado ainda tivemos um pequeno grupo que voltou para Angola.
Last year we had a small group that returned to Angola.
Então, essas pessoas misturando-se com as que falam português,
These people all mixed with those that speak Portuguese
conseguem facilitar o entendimento com os refugiados que nós temos em Angola.
and because of that they managed to establish understanding with the refugees that are in Angola.
Em particular na comunidade onde se encontram. Por exemplo, estamos a falar do Reino do Congo.
Especially with people living in the area of what used to be the Kingdom of the Congo,
Envolvia uma parte de Angola e uma parte do Congo Democrático.
and of which one part is in Angola, the other part is in the DRC.
Por isso, há algum entendimento em termos de linguagem,
There is some understanding in terms of language,
mas em termos de reintegração social, não.
but not in terms of social integration.
And that takes me to the next question, because the work that you're doing in Angola is extremely unique and not under the easiest of circumstances. What is it that Jesuit Refugee Service does specifically in Angola? Because again, in the 4 different regions, in the Southern Africa region, a lot of the work is different under different circumstances, but yet you see commonality. So vocational skills training is something that's almost universal. Education is something that's almost universal. Some type of medical intervention at whatever level is universal. But the work in Angola is very different. There's a different focus there. Just tell us what the focus is in Angola.
A nossa principal atividade é a assistência legal jurídica.
Our most important activity is legal assistance.
Aqui, enquanto, por exemplo, na África do Sul se faz advocacia,
For instance, in South Africa, you do advocacy,
qualquer pode fazer.
which can be done.
Mas em Angola só podem fazer os advogados.
But in Angola, it's not anyone who can do that, it's only lawyers who can do it.
Ok. E nessa atividade de assistência legal,
And concerning this legal assistance,
o trabalho que o JRS desenvolve é o aconselhamento jurídico,
the main activity of JRS is legal advice and counseling,
fazer recursos de documentação
to be a resource to help people to get documentation,
e também, nos casos principais, fazer monitoria nos centros de detenções
and also to do monitoring in the detention centers,
e ajudar na libertação dessas pessoas que geralmente são detidas por tudo e por nada.
and to help those who are in the detention centers to be released.
Por outro lado, de forma assim simplificada, também temos serviços de assistência aos mais vulneráveis.
On the other hand, we also have certain services that we give to most vulnerable groups.
Ali atendemos com doença, situações de doença, situação de renda de casa, bem como algum valor para alimentação.
We assist with those who are sick. We also help to pay rent for accommodation and some assistance to help them to buy food.
Porque infelizmente o governo não tem programa para os refugiados,
Because the government has no program of assistance for refugees.
apenas para assistência social para os angolanos.
Never mind, they don't even have that for social assistance for Angolans.
Por outro lado, outra atividade que é realizada também em Angola,
The other thing that happens in Angola,
temos programas de livelihood, mas não temos fundo suficiente para poder ajudar essas pessoas.
we also have a livelihood program, but we don't have sufficient funds to help everyone.
Temos os programas de SGVB e proteção das crianças.
We also have a program for assistance and protection of children
SGVB,
and SGBV, victims of sexual and gender-based violence,
onde é criado grupo de suporte entre as senhoras
where we have created support groups for women,
e elas mesmas, no seio delas, foram formadas algumas pessoas para poderem acompanhar esses grupos.
and certain people have been trained to accompany these groups.
Com relação às crianças, se têm dado formações a nível da sexualidade,
And for children, we also give them training concerning sexuality.
e o JRS em Angola tem estado muito próximo e lutando praticamente verbalmente com o governo por causa da lei ou então da circular que saiu, que proíbe a entrega de documento para as crianças.
And we are also constantly in argument with the government to try and reverse the recent government circular that was issued, which prohibits children from being issued with documentation.
O grande desafio que temos enfrentado nos últimos tempos
The biggest challenge that we've had most recently
é a documentação,
concerns documentation,
porque o governo emitiu uma lei o ano passado
because the government passed a law last year
sobre o direito de asilo,
regarding the rights of asylum,
que revogou a lei anterior,
which revoked the previous law
fazendo com que determinados serviços que serviam aos refugiados
and which terminated all the services that were given to refugees.
para que viesse outro, mas até agora, passado um ano, ainda não está regulado nenhum serviço.
And the new law has been passed, but for the past year it hasn't been implemented,
Significa que as pessoas não conseguem adquirir documentos,
which means that people cannot obtain documentation.
ao mesmo tempo as pessoas são detidas arbitrariamente
At the same time, people are arbitrarily detained,
e as JRS como tal tem que intervir.
and JRS has to intervene.
Por outro lado, é a única instituição em Angola que intervém nesse caso, junto com o lobbying do UNHCR.
And we are the only organization that intervenes in this case together with the lobbying of UNHCR.
That takes me to my final question, because based on what you're telling us and the amount of work that you have to do specifically around documentation, that means that these people are vulnerable and that they're exposed to certain maltreatments, and maybe you can just expand on that. What is it that they face? And last but not least, in the last 3 minutes that we have left, if you can just quickly sum up what the attitudes are of Angolans towards refugees and asylum seekers. I mean, it is a country that faces its own challenges with poverty, and in South Africa we've had some cases of xenophobia. In fact, it's a persistent issue, but it flares up every now and again. What has been the experience in Angola?
Bem, com o fechamento da entrega, por exemplo, de documentos,
For example, closing the closure of the issuing of documents.
para além disso, existe uma outra lei que proíbe que os refugiados tenham licenças para trabalhar.
There's another law that prohibits refugees from getting licenses to work.
Bem como a circular que proíbe praticamente a entrega de documentos para as crianças.
Just like the circular from the government that prohibits the issuing of documentation to children.
A realidade é que restringe quase todos os direitos que os refugiados ou requerentes de asilo têm.
And this restricts all the rights that refugees and asylum seekers have.
E existe aproveitamento,
And there is also an attempt,
exploração,
an exploration,
abuso
abuse,
de autoridades de alguns polícias, por exemplo,
and exploitation and abuse by certain authorities, especially the police,
que se aproveitam dessa situação pela falta de documentação para explorar e extorquir dinheiro dessas pessoas.
who use the situation in which refugees don't have documents to exploit them and to extort money from them.
E muitas das vezes essas pessoas, algumas, correm o risco de proteção de serem expulsas sem poderem se defender.
And quite often people are expelled from the country and deported without being given the opportunity to defend themselves.
And as a final point, the attitudes of, I mean, it's very disturbing hearing that from that state institutional level. And ordinary people in Angola, how do they respond? In just a few seconds, how do they respond to the presence of refugees and asylum seekers?
Ok, para os angolanos como tal,
Amongst Angolans,
por exemplo, no caso dos somalianos, eritreus, etc.,
especially in the case of Somalians, Eritreans, etc.,
sentem-se ameaçados tendo em conta o novo contexto do terrorismo.
they feel threatened by them and see this as a new onslaught of terrorism.
Com relação aos outros migrantes,
Regarding other migrants,
percebe-se que também querem vir estragar a economia do país
they feel that they want to come and destroy the country's economy,
e, na maioria, não são requerentes como tal, mas migrantes econômicos.
and that most of them are not asylum seekers but are economic migrants.
Este é o pensamento que se tem.
That is the thoughts that Angolans have.
I should say, look, we're working under extremely difficult circumstances, both at an institutional level, a community level, and I think that you're doing great work. You know, and it's very far-reaching. And Mona, I'm definitely looking forward to my next visit to Angola. I know I'm going to have your hospitality. You can look after me. I'm going to have a great time. But I should say thank you so much for your time now. I wish we had more time to talk,
Okay.
but there's always the next time. All the best to you.
Thanks to listen to me, and thanks for John to translate. And you are welcome in Angola at any time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best to you.
All the best to you.